Yeah, exactly. Right. So I'm gonna go pee real quick and
Or
then we'll get into it.
that's good.
All right. Well, I guess we don't. Cheers. Okay, everybody. No, 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 no. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. Now it says a native podcast with Matt and Zach. All right, welcome back, everybody, to our. Well, I shouldn't say welcome back. Maybe you're a first-time listener because this is the first ever A Native podcast with Matt and Zach. I am one of the co-hosts, Zach. We have Matt, the other co-host, with me. And as always, whenever I sit down and talk with Matt, I got to ask you, Matt, buddy, how you doing?
Doing pretty good, my man. Just sitting out here in Oregon and in Portland area, and the sun's out, and it's a good day.
It really is. It's a good day. We're starting a podcast. We're starting a wonderful new adventure, a new chapter in our professional careers in the sense of what we do for work. We like to talk about Native American media, advertising, marketing, all that fun jazz. We like to talk about research, history, traumas, you name it. We like to discuss it. We like to talk it. So we've decided we're going to start a podcast about it because this is kind of a conversation me and Matt have on almost a regular basis, a daily basis sometimes. A lot of these conversations, and it's going to be current events, relevant topics, from Indian gaming casinos to rancherias, reservations, tribal trust lands. Maybe we'll interview a tribal lawyer or two down the road. Definitely just want to cover Indian country from top to bottom, Alaska to Florida, Maine to California, and everywhere in between. And just really talk about Indian country, break it down, talk about the similarities, talk about the differences, and just get into it. I'm kind of excited. I don't know if you have some quick first thoughts when it comes to the mind here.
No, I mean, just hitting those variety of topics with issues affecting Indian country. I mean, we have, like Zach said, we have these conversations on the regular as these news articles come up and issues are happening. And I mean, yeah, I mean, we could be talking about native mascots one day. The next one, we're talking about missing and murdered women. So, you
Oh,
know,
exactly.
they're all relevant. They're all relevant. So,
And what I like about it is we're coming from a perspective, right? We're not speaking for Indian country in the sense that we're speaking for everybody. We're speaking from our perspective, from our backgrounds, our knowledges within Indian country. And that, with that being said, there's going to be people who have different opinions. And that's kind of one of the cool things when I think when you look about Indian country, or Native America, or the indigenous first peoples of North America, whatever you want to call them. Typically, we refer what I've heard it referred to as Indian country. So you're going to hear me speak to it on that level, on the national level, as Indian country. And I like to throw Hawaii in there too. So sometimes I'll throw my native Hawaiians. Got to give them the love, just because when you really look at what the U.S. government did to them, it is very similar to what actually happened to the American Indian, the North American Indian, where the Alaska Native. It's interesting because it's like they group the Alaska Natives and American Indians in together, but they don't group the Hawaiians necessarily. But in reality, I would say the Hawaiians and like lower 48 natives have more similarities, especially based on how the government treated them. Because you had like the Russian times and just the way the villages are set up in Alaska, which makes it its own unique part of Indian country. But again, that's another discussion for later. We will get into those topics. Don't worry, we will. But I want Matt to take the time, just based on kind of just to show, we live this every day. This is our professional jobs. We've worked in Indian country for a while. So just Matt, go ahead and I guess give your background a little bit and go ahead and talk about that for a while.
Yeah, yeah, thanks, Zach. So yeah, my name is Matt Williams. So a little bit about my background. Zach and I have kind of known each other since Oregon State University and working at the Native American Longhouse, which for some of our listeners, if they're familiar with that, that was a big deal when those cultural centers on campus were rebuilt. And it came a long way from the little Quonset hut, which was like an ROTC kind of little building that they gave the natives on campus, right?
Right.
And I actually know one of the original native people who went to school there. Renee, her name's Renee Romanos, and she actually lives here in Tigard, where I live. I found out. So it's like random you find these things out, but she was one of those founders as a student, of like, we're gonna get a native club together, and get some things going on campus. So anyway, kind of long story short there, we met each other and we found out we had a lot of commonalities, not just with native stuff, but with traveling and nature and different interests that we were passionate about, right? But I'm a member of the Oglala Lakota Nation, Pine Ridge, South Dakota. I think it's the fourth or fifth largest tribe, somewhere in there. I'd have to look back and check on that, but and I didn't grow up on the res. I grew up in Southern Oregon. It's an area known as the state of Jefferson to some. So, just interesting, like long story short there, my dad was adopted when he was a year old by a non-native family and adopted off the reservation, as many kids during that time period were before Indian child welfare. So for me, Oregon State and the Longhouse kind of launched me into getting involved with the native community, learning about my heritage and really reconnecting in a sense. But now I'm at this point, now I'm working within Indian country, spent some time in Montana, going to school, Idaho. So really the traveling I've done as well as involvement in the community is like enhance my education, as well as my own background and reconnecting with family too. We've never met. So
What is your just to tell people what your official degree at Oregon State was, because you did get your bachelor's there and then you received master's credit at Oregon State as well. So what
yeah
were those two?
yeah so the first degree I got a bachelor's in ethnic studies is the program, and then you choose your emphasis. So you choose Native American or Latino, Latina, or Asian or whatever. And I chose Native American, obviously. And so, that was really kind of a foundational, like your education is kind of like a foundation of like building something, right? So that's just kind of, you gotta know your history, know your future. So that was my bachelor's. My master's, I've been gradually working on that, but that is more focused on health disparities and historical trauma with the Lakota people, kind of tying it all in. Really passionate about that. I'm into the like traditional foods, and I know I focused a lot on the bison restoration, specifically as a food source with Native people in the plains. So and yeah, so I mean, I don't want to take too much, but just
Well,
yeah.
yeah. Well, and then from there, you were a Native student advisor at the North Idaho College.
Yep. That college has currently lost its what do you call it? The accreditation. And
But when you were there, it was good.
when I, yeah, well, it was the start of COVID year when we started working from home halfway through that school year. And I remember I'm like, man, North Idaho is a rough place to be a native, because my students were there too, and in Coeur d'Alene, a lot of them Coeur d'Alene, Spokane, those
Right.
groups, right? And they, they're like, yeah, we just kind of deal with it, like it's not it's not an easy place to go to school when there's not a lot of support for diversity. And I was just telling your dad that today when he came over about North Carolina. But yeah, so I've been in the plateau region working, I've been in the plains area, visited the Southwest. We were just at Gathering of Nations, traveled quite a bit, been to Hawaii, um, been to Mexico where there's indigenous people even. So, just seeing this like, wow, like native Turtle Island, North America, indigenous folks is so diverse. So much.
It's it's definitely interesting, for sure. I mean, and it gives you the background, kind of a little bit of taste of Matt, who he is, where you kind of spent your time, and then in what 2020, you joined the G&G team, and kind of helping us with what we do in Indian country, and it's been good working on a lot of those health promotion campaigns, figuring it out. We got some research coming up this fall with the FDA for anti-smoking. So anti-vaping, not smoking necessarily, but will be some good research definitely come. Both I heard we're going to do some focus groups, and Matt will be heavily involved with that. So that'll be interested to see. But to introduce myself, I am Zachary Gray. I am an enrolled Little Shell Chippewa member here from the state of Montana. My uncle is the current chairman of the Little Shell tribe. My dad is the founder of G&G Advertising, which is the first Native American advertising agency in the US, full service, and we've been going at it for 25 years strong there. My grandfather, just history on him, he was a big founder of a lot of Native American education. He was a superintendent at Heart Butte schools, Mescalero schools, at Chemawa boarding school in Salem there. He was one of the first Native American horseback park rangers in Glacier Park. And so a lot of when I look at a lot of my Native education, I think it comes from those guys, those three men right there, just based on kind of their accomplishments and what they have done in Indian country, what they continue to do in Indian country. My grandpa's still with the language program with the Little Shell tribe, and how like it's funny because like people are like, he's losing it, and it's like, no, he's not, because if you talk to him about like work and like the language program specifically, dude is sharp as a whistle with it. He's like, I got this guy over here doing this. Like he's just focusing on the shit he cares about.
Oh man, he talked to me for like 20, 30 minutes about Native American boxing.
Yeah.
But like, he's your guys' family has done a variety of things in different places. And I just wanted to add about G&G. Well, G&G's been in the Southwest, and now
Right.
been in the Plains, Billings, Montana for several years. Now is in the Pacific Northwest.
Well, and it's all just based, I guess, it's interesting looking at like the reasoning for each one, right? Like the Albuquerque, that's just because my dad, he got his start at the Art Institute down there in Santa Fe. And that was kind of cool. And that's kind of but that's where he founded G&G. So that's kind of where it started. And that's interesting because Albuquerque is very urban native, definitely a very urban native population, one of the top places when you look, especially Southwest, right? Like you could flip a coin between there and Phoenix, I think, on like big urban Southwest native populations. And so it was kind of cool. Like, again, like I didn't grow up on the reservation, but I've been around it my whole life. We would go to the casinos, the pueblos down there. We would go to the powwows, we would go to Gathering of Nations. Just the different events my dad did for work, the things that we did there was really kind of cool. And then you said, right, like then we came up here to Montana, and then we did that, which we didn't necessarily spend time on the reservation. We lived in Billings, but we went to reservations, we experienced the cultures, we had family that we'd go visit and things like that. And then now Thea, my wife, she's from the Fort Peck reservation. I really am spending time on it now. So it's just kind of cool how the world works that way. And then, like you said, the Northwest, Portland, and that's kind of where we're getting the start there. But that's just based on what G&G does, on a national level, and how we, promote healthy behaviors to Indian country, in that sense with that job. Um, yeah, it's enough about my family history. I guess my history, right? Me and you, we met at the Longhouse at Oregon State, as Matt was saying, and funny story is when you and I met, the first time we actually met was the summer of like start, when I was a first, senior of high school going into freshman, and we were touring the campus, and I was walking around campus, and my dad's like, "Oh, walk into the Longhouse," and sure enough, there's Matt there. We sat there and probably talked for about an hour with him, just about whatever, Oregon State football, whatever, getting to know. And then, lo and behold, here we are almost 10 years later. When you look at it, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
um but that is, I mean, that's the story of Indian country too. That's how small it is. When you want to be involved, that's when you want to get into it and do the right things, and help, I guess, our people. We all feel that way. I think when you talk about anybody, from Deb Holland down to, the guy flipping burgers in Wolf Point, like,
Right.
they're they all want to do something for Indian country, right? They want to better their people, they want to better their tribe, their reservation. And I think, you look at some of those things that unite us, historically, like Standing Rock, which you actually were able to attend. You went to Standing Rock, which is kind of, looking back, it's one of
Yeah.
those things I kick myself for not going.
Right.
Um, but
Right.
just what it is, right? It's interesting. So we met at Oregon State. We worked at the Longhouse together. I was involved with, I didn't quite have a degree at Oregon State when I was there, and then I actually ended up transferring back to Montana State University for personal reasons, Billings, and I actually ended up there, I think, coming home, right? Just by coming home to Montana, I got closer, you get closer with your family, because in high school you're like, let's leave, let's get out of here. I'm in Oregon. I want to do my thing out there. I'm away from you. But coming home to Montana, and then it really just opened up the tribal aspect. I took those. You're supposed to take native studies at Montana State University Billings, which I really applaud them for doing, making a lot of those students have to take that class. And it just kind of, for me, I kind of got a love for it, and I said, I'll minor in this, and I ended up minoring in it, um, and in native studies. But I think the connections you make in those classes, the impact you have in those classes, the people you involve yourself with, just because of like Reno Charette, one of my teachers, she's working for AHEC now, American Indians Higher Education Consortium.
Well,
So
we're still in contact with our professors that we had like years ago, like
exactly,
it's interesting.
it's one of those like fields where you're going to be connected
Mhm.
to those people. So you look back at like, wow, okay. And then you see the people who come and go, right? Because that's also part of Indian country. And there's that hesitancy, right? Whenever there is something new,
Right.
if it'll stick or not. But it's cool. We've been around the block. From there, I actually ended up taking a park ranger internship as a Native American park ranger at Pompey's, and that really helped because like we got into like doing some of the cultural stuff on a public level. So I was involved with like a TP project, and I got involved with like making videos for the BLM, and doing like a historical TP project where I got like in touch with the tribal historical preservation officers of all the tribes of Montana. And we ended up like, that's why you see the flags at Pompey's Pillar. If you go out there, they fly the tribal flags. That was a whole process. Like, it happened years after I left. They finally got the approval, because
Right.
that's how the government works.
But
But
you got that flame going a little bit.
oh yeah, I sparked it, which is good.
Yeah.
And it happened, and I actually, I think I've been out there once since. So we got to definitely, when you're out here, we'll have to swing by.
Yeah,
Uh,
that'd be good to see. I just wanted to add, like both Zach and I have done varying projects, varying involvement within Indian country. And I remember at Oregon State, myself, it was Lahui White Bear, our director, and Will Miller. We helped push for Columbus Day in Corvallis, Oregon. and changing it, or I mean, sorry, said that backwards. We don't want Columbus Day.
Getting rid of it. I knew what you meant. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, for the listeners there.
It's the first episode, guys.
Yeah, this is the first one. No, so advocating for the change to Indigenous People Day from Columbus Day, and the mayor, signed the proclamation like that fall and everything, and it just took, some initiative on our end, like we want this change. Now, we may not have gotten credit for it by the state of Oregon, because on the news they credited Portland and they left out Corvallis. But you
Well,
know,
no, and I'm
like,
glad you bring that up, because when you look at Corvallis not getting that mention, but it actually happening the same time as Portland, those were some of the first cities
right.
in America to do it. So you guys are a part of a big movement, an early movement, which now, like, I think the state of Montana is now trying to get on board, or some of these like I think New Mexico or Albuquerque just passed it too, or whatever, when we were down there. You see
Idaho might take a while.
exactly, but some of them are starting to do, and it's good to see
Yeah,
that. It's just
like,
you still get your days off work, just change the name. There's nothing wrong with it. It's the right thing to do. I saw like Swastika Peak somewhere got its name changed back to a native name to honor like a native chief.
that was in Oregon, wasn't it?
I think so. And Southern Oregon, which makes sense.
No, so my professor from Oregon State, one of them was from Grand Ronde. He actually was the one involved with that.
Okay, but so it happened. They got its name changed officially back, which all I saw was good. Like, because everyone's like, "Yeah, we don't want that history. Like, let's have good history."
No, it was southeast of Eugene, kind of toward Oak Ridge, kind of over there was it, yeah, where it was. So yeah.
No, it's definitely that's cool. That is really cool. That's it's cool. Like, but see that again, that's Indian country. It's a small world. You interact with people, and that's why you got to be respectful of those who you do interact with in Indian country, because
Right.
we do need to take it on a professional level, and own up to how
Well,
we treat and act within Indian country.
yeah, and I just wanted to make it clear to our listeners, you and I are both from Plains region cultures.
Right.
Right. And like, that being the case, we're not just going to emphasize on Plains. Like, we're going to be outside of that. Obviously there will be things we can relate to because we're more familiar with those groups, right? But
Well, and I think you're right, and we'll try and open up, and we'll share those stories. Like you said, we were just down in the Southwest, we'll share those stories with you. We'll try and interview people from like the Pueblos, from Alaska villages, from Hawaiian, tribes, from maybe we'll get a Seminole on here. That'd be really cool. Talk to East
hey,
Coast
we
too.
can highlight some folks that don't get highlighted as much.
As we should, and we will, because I mean, to talk about to talk really kind of about like some of the episodes we want to get into. I know that's the category we're going to get into, we're going to call it kind of like the ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, and we're going to knock out tribe by tribe. There's 574 federally recognized tribes. We're going to go through and go all 500 in a row. No, not in a row. We'll mix it up. We'll give you guys some fun. We'll highlight one here. We'll highlight one there, but we'll give them their time to shine. We'll learn about them, and we'll talk about them, and we'll share them with you. Because one of our big major goals is to educate those on Indian country to the best of our knowledge, to what we can share, what we identify and undercover. For example, working on the census campaign, one of the biggest issues we face with the census, and you hear it with like IHS, is like, oh, we're underfunded. Well, part of the reason is they only take the alone number of American Indians on the census data. So if there's only 2 million natives checking the box alone, funding is based off that 2 million, because that's the census data they use. So we were encouraging people I was encouraging people during the 2020 census that I knew to say, no, if you're native, mark that, because you get those services, and that really does help, and it benefits your people. Where the 2 or more races kind of gets fuzzy.
They just get thrown. And this is an issue, Zach, from Indian Health Service to college enrollment numbers to anywhere there's data, they just get thrown into multiracial.
Well,
Anyone that,
and you hear we always talk about just how Indian countries that way we're some of the most studied subjects because people like to study natives, that this data, there's so much data. So it's an important topic. It really is.
yeah, yeah,
It's something we'll get into. That's another episode. But again, we want to learn more along the way. We're going to educate. We're going to discuss some relevant topics. We're going to talk about the things that are relevant in Indian country, especially like Deb Haaland getting Secretary of Interior, or Chuck Sams being the first director of the national parks. And then, like, not only that, like, you notice, like, I know people are like, they're shitting on Biden in the Biden administration, but Deb Haaland's a part of that administration, and the national park system has just been hitting bangers since 2020. You know what I mean? Like, ever since like Chuck Sams came to office, like, you just like the national parks is just great news all around. You know what I mean?
yeah, no, I mean, and like Yellowstone's got that tribal history center or something. They
They're
have
right
now.
there at Old Faithful.
Yeah, and there's more protections happening of these national monuments and or declaring them a national monument, right? There was
Right.
that one in Southern Nevada a while back, and there's others. There's
Well, then you and I, we talked about on the Wandering Ways podcast with our buddy Mark. For him, we talked about the national park in Georgia that might be created, and
right.
how the tribals over there will be involved in that. So, no, it's great. It's really great to have these topics and to discuss these topics, and to kind of create that place for Indian country to discuss these topics. And if you guys have any questions for us, or you have a topic you'd like us to discuss or do a little more research on, please email us gng@gng.net. That's G as in garden gnome. No, it's in G as in garden, N as in Nancy, and then G as in garden at gng.net. It's and yeah, shoot, Matt will respond to you. He'll write you a little poem back. No, I'm just kidding. um that'll be the way. If you have any topics you would like us to discuss or any questions that we could answer, we'll be happy to answer them here on the podcast, to our knowledge, and we're happy to learn along the way, because there's a lot of things. You hit on some topics. We'll talk about IHS, we'll talk about different organizations like Portland Area Indian Health Board. We'll talk about different tribes, talk about this, like, the truths for our Indian people, Indian country, what we can, to our best of knowledge, what we can do to help. I think that's kind of the biggest thing is, part of this is like, what can we do to help? What can we do to help spread the message? You release as well, if you guys are interested, Matt releases a newsletter and infographic. The infographic comes out monthly, the newsletter bi-monthly. It's called The Storyteller. It's produced by G&G as well. Matt, maybe you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So yeah, our storyteller newsletter kind of, what spurred that a few years ago now was highlighting, issues going on in Indian country, highlighting, sometimes it's not just issues or negative things. Sometimes it's like, we're talking about, events or celebrations, or I just did one on one of the stories on the one that just went out was the data issue. And then like another one on there was the spring, like first foods. So I highlighted the Columbia River, tribes that celebrate the return of the salmon runs now in this time of year. So, and then we tie in the marketing advertising twist to that, with certain things we're involved with or as they come up too. So it's a variety of things. The infographics one has been popular, visually highlights data with different topics. And I think that educates people. It helps people see like, wow, I see that this is a big issue, right? Or that this needs to be addressed, and it creates awareness too.
Well, and that's part of our goal, right? You know, what was the census numbers? I think in 2020 was it 10 million natives essentially?
Something like that. Yeah.
We estimate it around there.
Yeah.
Uh, that's a lot. That's a big number. We matter, we definitely matter. And you look at some of the subjects like murdered and missing Indigenous women. You look at like our health rates. You look at just different, the different issues. Like we go to prison more often, even more so than like African American men.
I know.
And
Per capita, yeah, it's more.
and you see the way they highlight that, and natives aren't highlighted. So that's part of it too. Is we want to bring justice to that. We want to bring awareness to Indian country in our own ways. Um, this summer you and I are going to travel Montana, and we're going to hit up as many reservations. I was joking like, shit, when we go down to the Bighorn, we're going to have to go over to Northern Cheyenne too, just so we can say we hit them all in one.
Go snagging.
No, I'm good. You can. Yeah, you
You're
can.
married. You're married,
Yeah,
but
I'm married.
I
My
can, as
yeah,
long as they're not my cousin, I'm good.
right. No, exactly. You gotta always make sure, especially in Indian country. No, yeah, maybe we'll get a native comedian on here to tell you a few jokes too. That'll be
Oh
um,
man, that native comedy show in Albuquerque we saw was something else, man.
it was a good time. It was a good time with everybody.
The most inappropriate comedy I've heard in a long fucking time. I can tell you that much.
Comedy's different. It really is, and that exactly. We'll have to have an episode on it as well. We'll have to
Want
discuss the
you, it's
whole.
real. Some of the white viewers on here might not like it so much, but it helps you understand who we are. It helps
It
you.
does. It really does. I mean, it's funny because people, a lot of people look into Indian country in the ways they do of like, oh, there are people, and it's interesting because really comes from the European mindset. And it's interesting because like my mom's white and grew
Same.
up like right. Her family grew up very white. But like my dad's family, like even though like my dad's mom is Polish Ukrainian, they grew up native, just the style, the way like my grandpa just controlled the family, the things we did, even the closeness like with my cousins. Like I didn't realize like other people aren't close with their cousins the way natives are close with their cousins. And it's just, I mean, I guess like, and that's why I say like Hawaiians, that's one of those things, you know what I mean?
Well, I
Or
think
other races.
you and your cousin Jared are like almost like brothers in a way. Like it, right?
In a way, exactly. And it's interesting, and you really do get that within Indian country. How many times has your grandpa or someone like that introduced you to somebody saying, "Hey, this is your cousin," and you're like, "Grandpa." They're all my cousins. No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
But that's cool. I mean, that's really what's great is cool and unique when you do go to those events. I mean, I guess those events are like funerals and weddings, so like it should be mostly family. No. But it is what it is. And then I guess to finish off, I guess I didn't really finish off my background there. After I kind of worked as a park ranger at Pompey's Pillar and getting my education in mass communications, which is kind of just a fancy way of saying like social media communications degree. But I got my minor in Native Studies. I actually ended up taking an internship in Cincinnati for an advertising company called Gyro, and they focused on business to business marketing. So kind of like the companies that sell to the wholesaler, in a sense. You're a dealer who sells a bunch of farm equipment, farm tractors, farm implements. But we're John Deere. We got to make ads relevant to you. So that's kind of what I learned and focused on there. And then from there we went and it just wasn't my cup of tea. So then I came back and I started working for G&G and really getting back at home with Indian country and learning and traveling, and going to these places like Alaska or Pierre, South Dakota or Spokane, Washington, and really seeing the natives. And it's interesting. We have like I say, we have our differences, but we also have those similarities deep down. And it's kind of cool, and you have like even those nons, like fry bread. That's a similarity we all have. We all love fry bread. Thanks, American government, but for that. But no, there's just different things, and it's really cool. And I'm excited that we have a discussion platform to talk about that and just share that with folks. And again, our goals just to educate people the best we can, the best of our knowledge. Again, like we don't represent Indian country by any means in that way. We don't speak for Indian country. We can just share our personal experiences and opinions on it. And we want to create that positive platform throughout this whole thing. This is a positive environment. Everyone's opinions are respected, and we'll show that respect. And that's why we want to interview someone from every uh Pueblo, Rancheria, reservation, off native land trust, village, all all of them. And talk to Indian country and educate those about, if you got a problem going on in your rock, let us know about it. We're curious. We want to hear it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I'm excited about it. I mean, and it'll be interesting because we'll even learn some stuff too. You know,
Right. No, and like you said, one of the things we do is we have our own little breakdowns internally of work of how we break down a tribe and how we can better learn and understand them. And we're happy to share that with you guys along the way. So I don't know, Matt, anything real quick here as we wrap up this opening intro. I know it's kind of a short intro, but we
no,
have
it's it's good. I like the direction of where we're going. And I kind of left out a little part of my family history too, which is it's an area we don't mention much, but I have to acknowledge because I have the blood is I am of Cherokee heritage as well. And that's one of the topics we'll probably get into one of these episodes is pretendians and identity and
no, I that's a great
oh,
topic.
our family that's in Oklahoma is enrolled. So, it's not some pretendian thing and I have some ancestors there, so I need to acknowledge it a little more.
Well, exactly, and that's definitely one of those things that you hear, like, what makes an Indian Indian, right? And that's kind of that topic, and we get into even like tribal enterprises in the sense of like, when you get into like, oh, natives get money from the government. It's like, oh, wait a second, what makes an Indian Indian? And I guess to me, enrollment status is the best way to define that. If there is a federally recognized tribe that is out there and they say you are an enrolled member, that to me is the official way. Obviously, there are people you and I both know who are not enrolled, who are fully native. There are people who are enrolled that should not be enrolled. Um, and it's interesting, because that's even Indian country, that stems from the reservation era days.
Well, and I think when we get to I don't know if we combine a episode on Native Hawaiians and state recognized tribes, but like little shells were state recognized.
Yeah, what
We people
what
in
does that mean?
right.
And what does that mean now that we're federal, right? And we've been federal for a while now, but you look at like Cowlitz up in Spokane, they were, same issue in like 2000,
Oh,
2001, they become federally recognized, right? You look at that, you see those things, and it really just like it it happens and it needs to be discussed. We need to talk about it because, like the little show, when you really look at our struggle, man, there's a whole book. It's called Under One Robe. It's a
right.
really good book written by Nicholas Ruman. And
It's basically your guys' history in one book,
yeah,
essentially.
and it's the 100 years of just
Yeah.
little shell people saying, no, we're not going to bend over to the federal government. We're not going to accept that. We're not going to accept that. We want you can do better. You can do better. And finally in 2019, we got our federal recognition because it turned interesting how like World War I, World War II, those kind of things roll around, history does its stuff, and certain things just get pushed aside. And a lot of native issues do get pushed aside. And I think that's where, I hear Reno saying it right now. Just the new warriors are in the courtroom. The new native battles are fought in the courtroom. That we don't need to be fighting out on the prairie. Let the lawyers do the fighting for us. Um, and they do, they really do. And it's really interesting to see, native law. Oh, talk about a degree.
Oh, that's, man, props to those people, man, because there's some heavy hitters and some hardcore men and women going in that we need to go in there and fight those battles, you know?
It's good, and it really is, and it's good to see. It's exciting to see. I guess we're gonna wrap up here soon. Any final thoughts? Any good wishes? Any what going forward and into the ending here?
Yeah, a lot of it kind of to end it and coming up this weekend's Mother's Day. So everyone get your mother a gift. But we come from women, we the Mother Earth, the just remember to acknowledge your mothers this weekend and our tribes, and the things happening to women. So just wanted to highlight that.
I like that. I like that. Even though this is our debut episode coming out in August, but I like I like the message.
We're
Uh,
practicing. We're practicing. Sorry about that, listeners. You're gonna be
no,
like, wait, Mother's Day was back in May. What's he talking about?
see, someone might be tuning into this episode next year in like May, so it might work out. So you
Gonna
never
be
know. So thank you for
extra
tuning
prepared for Mother's Day months ahead of time.
in. And if they made it this far, thank you guys so much. We appreciate it. We're excited to talk about the different topics, get into interviews, talk about the tribes, talk about Resball, all the different things. That series is coming out on Netflix here soon.
Yep.
So I'm sure we'll have an episode dedicated to that. So I'm excited. Maybe we'll talk about res dogs. Maybe we can get one of the res dogs on here. We'll see. We'll try. But until next time, everybody, bye.
Oh man. You
Uh,
ended.
I go here. Stop work.
Yeah, I don't know why I was